it was just a plethora of websites just mushrooming every single day. And that's, I think, the stage or the phase that I see generative AI. So I think that to me is very exciting, that the common person, people of all ages are really, kind of gotten into it. But I think what we want to focus on today, the few minutes that we have, what does it really mean for our industry, right? We are obviously at the end, core technology and business services industry. We are in the people business as well. We are helping our clients with their technology roadmaps and the business services roadmaps. So what are the potential, opportunities that exist for us to be, again, ahead of the game here? And what does it really present? So maybe, Anupam, you want to start with some perspectives on that, and we can obviously get some reflections from the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. We can also get some questions from you all. So again, this is of course a very fast-moving landscape, but never before in the history of technology has something taken on this, aggressively and captured everyone's imagination. It's doing to AI what Google did to search, right, and democratizing access to AI for not just companies, to individuals. When you start hearing conversations from common person on the street about how they're using generative AI to create schedules for them and so on, we know something has really changed, right? So this is of course a very broad conversation we can have, but to Akshay's point, we want to kind of maybe sandbox it within our context, our industry's context, right? On one hand, what is the impact on the service provider ecosystem in terms of changing the way you deliver services and provide value to clients? On the other hand, what are the new avenues that are opening up, business opportunities that will be driven by generative AI? Right? And again, ChatGPT is just one component, of course. It's the biggest component in terms of market attention, but there's so much else going on, right, within the generative AI space. So, what are the options? It is certainly going to drive a lot of rethink, rewiring of the way you operate, whether it's in the IT side or the business process side, your delivery functions. Some of it is being felt already in certain areas, like where you have content editors and moderators right now that can be now replicated by generative AI, right? But long term, I think you're thinking about a magnitude impact, flow of knowledge, and analysis of structured and unstructured data to drive some kind of an outcome. So that impact will happen, I think, over the next course of a few years, rewiring of how you deliver services, and also enable higher margin for yourself and higher value for your clients, right? So it's that's going to happen. On the market opportunity side, I think it is still a little bit of a very wide open field, and in different industries you'll see different kinds of opportunities. But there is no doubt that enterprises are definitely exploring use cases that will enable either faster results or more efficient or error-free results through generative AI, or just doing things that were not economically or practically feasible before without use of technology like this. So I think across the industry, if you let's take media as an example, through generative AI with, of course, the support of human beings. Now, just to put that in context, I don't think this is going to entirely remove the role of human agents, because you still need guardrails. The way I see generative AI evolving, it's still at a very infancy, toddler stage. What that means is you need a babysitter to make sure it doesn't go rogue, make sure it doesn't churn out output that is, in many cases, incorrect, or in some other cases it could be biased, right? Or in other cases it could be unethical. So you still need guardrails, you still need some QC around it, and more importantly though, you need still the human component, which is bringing in the sentimental analysis or contextual analysis, which only human brain can do. I mean, generative AI is not going to get there anytime soon. So I think there's a lot of opportunity on the market side. There's also going to be a lot of rethinking, rewiring on the service delivery side, which is going to impact all of us.
No, I think on the service delivery aspect of it, would love to actually get some reflections from the audience as well. But I am already seeing a lot of software development getting assisted through the use of generative AI. Of course, now Microsoft with the GitHub Copilots and other technologies. I think a lot of small to mid-sized development shops are already using it. They're seeing benefits of 15-20% or more. Again, I agree with you. I think jobs are not going away. They just get shifted to more higher value tasks, and it just gets you more productive, more efficient, and so on. So I think there's both opportunities on the service delivery improvement, like you said, both on the faster development, programming cycles, and so on. Stitching together POCs, prototypes is going to be so much. So when a technology like this is trained on the client proprietary data sets, then that will lead to some interesting use cases coming out of it as well. I mean, we at Avasant are putting it on the data sets that we have, which is client contracts and client schedules and so on. And we're doing some early stage, tinkering with it. And it'll be interesting to see what it shows up. But I think that's the phase that it is right now, and which is everybody should be very curious about it. I don't know how many in the audience have actually created an account and have been tinkering with it. It will be,
I guarantee you, a vast majority. Any stragglers out there? Anyone that thinks this is a passing fad?
I was the early accessible to the ChatGPT, and I started playing with it a little bit around it. So very interesting.
More and more conversations around the Gen Zs. It is more into the emojis, not text anymore. Now it is very interesting to see how when you are talking to ChatGPT in terms of emojis, how it is interpreting. And if anybody has not done that, please do that. You'll be surprised to see the kind of interpretations coming out of it. And from there, the idea is evolving into that when you're looking into the generative AI use cases, text is not the only portion on which you are training your large language models. It is more and more going to be your emojis, their interpretations, images, and a lot, like you talked about the healthcare part of it, right? Healthcare, again, a lot of data flows in, but if you look at the kind of CT scans, the X-rays, I'm just taking an example, right? A lot of information is hiding today in these areas as well. It will be very interesting to see how generative AI is going to explore these use cases and bridging in that gap of the biasness which Anupam talked about.
Yeah, right. So fraud analytics, fraud prevention is a huge, obviously, challenge facing banking, insurance, healthcare, so many other sectors. But in banking especially, both the compliance and the fraud pieces right now are really very ideally suited for this. And I was talking to CEO of Regions Bank. It's a mid-sized bank, and he said they're already running real pilots and they're seeing amazing results.
Full of emojis and the kind of interpretations coming out of it. I think it will be a bit interesting to look at how you're going to train generative AI onto it, because it's not a general standard English language.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the areas that become the biggest users of generative AI, not to generate questions, but to detect, plagiarism, right? Where their students are using that to write an answer, prepare homework. But again, looking at it on the student population side, in fact, studies are showing that most students are not using it to cheat. They're using it to accelerate and consolidate research. So it's basically a tool that hypercharges your research process. So they're not looking at it to churn out, which I don't know if it's practically even feasible or not.
How the technology is moving, you can't
stop
that juggernaut.
You can't, I guess, re-port that genie bottle, right? It's out of the bottle. So
yeah, I think you asked about use cases. Before, building a knowledge graph was a pretty expensive exercise, right? So most of the industries which are very much dependent on processing information and developing that deep knowledge are the ones which are probably going to take advantage of GenAI. You know, if you talked about some examples like when you talk about finance, beyond fraud, even asset management, right? To expect an average asset manager to be able to look through tons of research, right, and then portfolios and come together with respect to what to do, right? I think that's where I think once you put your language models around this sources of information, you can really get there. Similarly, pharma we talked about, right? It takes 10 years to develop a drug, right? But if you're able to really garner the research from the various institutes and then be able to assimilate that, I think that's another big use case. So I think we feel that these are the places where there is a big explosion which is going to happen, where the knowledge industries which are dependent on this research and discovery will be the first to take advantage, at a scale.
Yeah.
Still, I think, in the midst of a class action suit. So I think those are our points of worry. I don't know if you have any viewpoint on that. Yes, you did talk about Musk asking a pause. I think that may get very real on what this can potentially do. So just any viewpoints from your side on that aspect.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, you're already seeing, this new job profile of a prompt engineer. I came across this website called promptbase.com. You should check it out. It has thousands of people selling prompts at $2.99, $4.99. So you can go ahead, buy a prompt, and use that to do whatever you want. So it's a marketplace which is already like that. So I think some jobs will, yes, they could move away from doing the role-oriented or task-oriented to more different area for a lot of service providers. Right? Those jobs didn't exist 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. And that's a huge multi-billion dollar, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people there. So I think that's going to happen. Second, there are some very valid concerns even using this as a co-pilot and so on, right? Because you work with very large, complex Fortune 10, 50, 100. A lot of this is open source technology. So you have to be very mindful of what's put out there, because you have to be careful of the client confidentiality, the NDAs and so on. So I think there are those real challenges to be solved there in terms of how it can be used. I think Microsoft is going to continue to make a big push on it because they're very heavily invested. And Microsoft, we all know, they know the enterprise really, really well. So they don't get it right the first time, the second time, but eventually they do. So I think, I think there are, yes, to your point, there are some things to be thought about in terms of. So I think yes, it's still work in progress or very early days.
Conversational input. But what is actually interesting is just like we have series and Ensure Assist. They feed into enterprise search and enterprise conversational models. There, the hallucination of generative AI falls short. So you need a multimodal layer, which is a one-shot, zero-shot, bi-shot models on top of that. So when you take this deployment to inside an enterprise, that's where the limitations of generative AI that we are getting to see. It's also an opportunity for service providers. I heard this word QC. When you actually generate output from generative AI, it still needs a validation to make it contextual to the business. The positive side is, she was telling, these are training assistants, they are GitHub assistants already, that can increase the productivity levels. On a lighter note, my daughter just did some invitation to a function we are doing, and she generated the entire text for the invite and the image. She's in class 9, using that, and then she had fun. So it's cross-bound. That's what we are seeing from our side actually.
No, I think going back to public data set, right? For it to work within the confines of an enterprise, that data set has to be curated and has to be industrialized, right? So that you're not getting these false positives or wrong results or biased or non-ethical kind of output. So the industrial data sets are still being created, which will enable a higher level of application within the enterprise. And that's happening. Different companies are doing it already. And that's what will really help take this into the enterprise and create a much, much bigger opportunity for our industry.
Just a point, actually Bloom on the education side is completely disrupting how the teach assist. That's a great use case. Right. This is going to be what it is in the future. Yeah. Thanks.
I have a question.
Well, he needs to be assassinated and needs to be replaced, right? That's how the entire plot comes into picture. And there is one more series named as Person of Interest, right, which gained a lot of traction recently, talking on similar lines, where you're talking about the past data, and it will decide whether the person will be a victim or a perpetrator. Now, I would like to know your thoughts on where we are heading into that zone, where a particular AI will tell that, all right, this leader is not functioning, we need to replace him. Right? That is number one. And number two, and how big an impact will it have from a service provider standpoint as well, right? Because Musk has again come out and said we need to stop it. There are 1,000 different people saying it, but it doesn't really look like it's going to stop. So just want to know your views on how quickly it's going to happen, because the digital skill gap, everything, we know that the vanilla skills, if you learn Java or anything, you had a security of about 8-10 years. And the digital skill gap is now 2 or 3 years, right? Every 2 years you're getting new skills coming up. So basically two different questions, but again heading into the same thing. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, easily. But again, I'm not sure that generative AI is going to push us in that direction. I mean, AI has been there for many decades, right? And deep learning based AI systems actually are much more insidious or dangerous than what generative AI is, right? But end of the day, if it's getting embedded into various elements, meaning it's part of cybersecurity, it's part of ERP systems, part of other systems, and they start talking to each other, and then decisioning is happening at that level. That's where the risk comes in. So I don't think we're anywhere close to that, at least for the next decade. Yes, the possibility always exists, but that's not what scares me. What scares me is more, I think, the biases of the system. What scares me more is how it's applied within critical systems like, self-driving car, right? Autonomous vehicles. AI is already working within that. Now, it can either be biased or it could have some fatal flaws that come up. Let's say it's trying to save an accident where you're going to likely hit a pedestrian, or the other option is it's going to crash the car and the passenger will die, the driver will die. How is it going to decide? Kill the standby passenger or kill the driver? So those are the kind of things that to me are more risky than the fear of what you mentioned.
I think I've seen some of, again, I've not personally experimented with this, but some folks have been giving prompts which pose these moral questions to ChatGPT, and it's interesting how some of those responses come out. But I think to me, again, at the core, it has to unleash the human creativity and imagination. I think that, the goal of for any of the technology has to be, how does it free up our time, right? Or how does it help us infer or drive decisions based on that, which is better, faster, cheaper, all of those. So I agree with Anupam. I think that's a long time away in terms of it becoming that sentient, which is taking those decisions or all of that together. That's why I think a lot of this conversation also around that has to have that kill switch, or how can you abort if really you do abort, right? And very sci-fi. But yeah, I think there's I think many more hurdles to be crossed before we get there.
Yes, they have blocked it. They have blocked it, and the question they asked was a little more ethical in nature. What they said was, if an engineer puts a code into ChatGPT and ChatGPT creates a code, who owns the code? Does the engineer own the code because he had some questions to it, or does ChatGPT own the code? And when it comes to a customer, then are we ethically charging the customer correctly? Because the brain was somebody else, the question came from somebody else. So what's your take on this? How is it going to be solved? Because I see a similar conundrum that happened with autonomous cars, where if an accident happens, who takes the responsibility? Does the driver take it, or does the car manufacturer take it? And then the ownership keeps on getting passed on. What's your take on that?
Research perspective. What if we use this to write some short, research bites, as we call them, content pieces? The authorship, like you said, in research, it's even more paramount, and similar in the software development as well. There should be authorship to whoever was contributing. So even today you would see, we've not put anything out because we see some fundamental issues in terms of it being used for research.
It doesn't give the attribution to the source.
Yeah, so there's no attribution that it does and so on. But if you were to use that as a piece of technology, I know some service providers are actually reporting in their quarterly results, these many bots we have, RPA bots and so on, right? I think that's finally, I think, right now. But I think those are very valid questions. I think there needs to be some attribution. One is, giving credit where it's due, but then also I think informing the reader or the user who's consuming it that this was partly contributed by an AI bot, or because I think it's just fair disclosure. I think my take is, as much as giving the authorship and credit, but reader be there, right? Now, of course, we can't do that in enterprise software where it's been running for 15-20 years. So that human curation there is very, very strong. Needs to be very strong. So yeah, I think from that ethics perspective, that transparency has to be there.
Yeah, and again, the way I look at it, I don't think, again, this is just a tool, right? Right now, if you use Google or Yahoo or Bing to do your searches and prepare a research paper, nobody asked you, did you search it on Google, did you search it on Bing? We're in the early stages of this technology disruption, that's why we're asking these questions. And of course, there are no guardrails or regulations or standards yet. But guess what? There weren't any in the search space as well. The industry just evolved and self-regulated and so on. So now you have safe search and all these other, guardrails around it. So something similar will happen here. It's already happening. But I think this thing about, we use ChatGPT to produce something, I think it'll become a non-issue. Given that, of course, we need some provisions against ethical, moral biases and so on and so forth. And end of the day, I don't think it takes away from human creativity, which is the other big question mark that, are we going to give away all our creativity? Because again, what it's really doing is regurgitating stuff from what it knows, right? So if I ask it to draw a landscape using, Picasso kind of style, it'll come up with something, but is that truly creative? I don't think so. We may think it's being creative, it's actually just regurgitating what it sees from different data sets.
Anupam, this is right here. I have a point of view. Hey, if you have that insight drawn from data that you have fed in, we crunching more than about 1.5 billion raw UVs every day. Fundamentally, what we have been able to achieve is look for behaviors and patterns and look for anomalic trends. So what the human eye normally looks for is a movement or any anomalic behavior in a static environment. That can easily be fed into this entire concept of generative AI or AI and ML running together and allowing the machine to do what a human would not like to do or would not do, especially because of alert fatigues. So as you look for a use case, you look for anomalous behaviors. That is a very, very strong detection that we can do, and then we can put the machine learning and automation to do the defensive mechanisms. What we have been able to achieve significantly is to do the entire prevention and protection, which is a very important thing because what passes through that is the attack, which can still, the AI and ML can still do the detection and response. But you can do a lot of shift left. The guardrail that you referred to is something which is in play here. What would have happened in a conventional ransomware attack or any other attack, which is advanced persistent threat or 0 days, is that you come to see that attack almost in a penultimate stage, where there's very little that you can do. And you can at best slow down the whole process and bring in backups. But if you can catch it at a very early stage, thanks to all this AI sitting there, we've been able to move the entire attack chain to a reconnaissance stage itself, and where the attacker is coming and doing an AI-based reconnaissance. Remember, they are doing the same thing that we are doing. It's a great Tom and Jerry game. So I think there's a slide, you talked about platformization. There is a significant place for this AI from an analogous or anomalic behavior and pattern. We are using it to great advantage. We have reduced our workforce by almost 65%. Thanks to us.
I think we've run out of time. I think there's obviously a lot of excitement around this, so we'll carry forward.
I think we can carry it for another half an hour, but I know we have to keep moving on, and then there's lunch after one more session.
Yeah.
And that next session is really one that I think, of course, is another one that, around ESG and sustainability, that our industry is, I think, we're still not that prepared. And that's coming, that change is happening as we speak. So, we should let Chandrika have her say there. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.